All right. I'm excited about this one. I've got an awesome guest joining me today. Been trying to get her to come on for a while. We were finally able to coordinate our schedules. This is someone that I met, I think, about 2 years ago at the IFA,
Mhm.
which is the International Franchise Association. And started off, I think, as a random conversation in a panel that we were both sitting in on. And, we've kind of formed a connection since then. And she's got a fascinating background. She's involved in some really cool businesses, one that she's getting ready to launch here very soon, and we'll talk about that today. But she's going to have a lot of really good insight that she's going to share with the audience today. I mean, she's the definition of an entrepreneur and someone that's, always looking to continue to grow not only her businesses, but as a person as well. So have the privilege of speaking with Heather Van Eyck today. Heather is the owner of Northwest Design House in Corvallis, Oregon. So that's an interior design company. And, Heather's shaking up the world of interior design, as she puts it. Her company offers an amazing interior design options for their clients, but they do so in a way that's affordable, sustainable, and personal, which I think is a unique and refreshing approach to interior design. In addition to that, Heather owns a budget blinds franchise there in Oregon as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then also Heather's in the process of taking her interior design business, which has been very successful there in Oregon, and franchising it. And that's going to be Kaluna Interior Design. So we'll talk a little bit more today about why she decided to franchise this business that she's created, and a little bit more about that opportunity in case anyone out there is interested in becoming a franchisee for Kaluna Interior Design once that's an option. So with that, Heather, welcome to the Path to Freedom podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Wes. This is exciting. I'm so excited that you're launching this. So
Yeah, I know.
that was a great introduction.
Yeah, well, we
You
talked
sound
about
really busy.
right. Yeah, I know. As we sit here quarantined in our homes, so that's
Right.
that's what it took for us to finally get this coordinated was a quarantine.
Yes, it's
Uh,
right. That's right.
so I'm getting a lot of podcasts recorded these days.
There you
That's
go.
one
Build it
one
up.
positive.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we saw each other in, where were we? Orlando a couple months ago at the
We did.
IFA
Yes.
conference, and we talked about
Yes.
having you come on the podcast. It was really just kind of a theory of mine at that point. I hadn't started
Mm-hmm.
recording or anything. So here we are, though, recording this, and I'm excited about it because, like we've talked about, I think your story is really going to resonate with so many of the people listening in. I know, how intrigued I've been just getting to know you, and it's very impressive what you've done in your businesses. But, once I think everyone hears what you have to say, they'll see the way I've seen that you're just, an infectious person to be around. You're very clearly, motivated, and you're the type of person that doesn't let anything, get in your way. Once you've, set a goal for yourself, once you've kind of created a vision, you're going to do whatever it takes to make that vision turn into a reality. And I think that's a necessary characteristic for any entrepreneur. So, again, appreciate
I
you
would agree.
and looking forward to it. So I know the introduction I gave was very high level. So, maybe start off by just giving us a little bit more of your background.
Sure.
How'd you get into interior design, and then kind of take us up through there?
Yeah, I think that I always kind of had the entrepreneur gene in me. My aunt actually owns the subways in my local town. So I watched her. She was kind of like a second mom to me. And
Yeah.
so I watched her run these businesses and run employees. I was one of her employees. And it was just such a great experience. And she still is like a guiding light to my life. Of course, she's retired now, but it was just interesting. I mean, even in high school, I didn't really know what a franchise was, but I
Yeah.
knew she owned these stores and I watched her run them. And then early on in my career, I really got into sales. I think just I'm a people person by nature. And I ended up working for a startup company that was designing software during the dot-com era. And
Okay.
somehow I just landed a position with a software company selling their products. Definitely was in over my head, but as usual, just jumped in and act like I knew what the hell I was talking about.
Yep.
And it was just such a wonderful experience. And watching these software engineers do their job and understand how it can change the world. I had no idea why that seed was being planted, but now it's come full circle. And I absolutely see the reasoning behind these software solutions and how I can apply it to my franchise brand. So I went to school for interior design. I love business. Business is definitely in my blood, and it's what I love to talk about the most. But I also love creativity. And so I really wanted to merge those two things and make sure I could challenge both sides of my brain. And
Yeah.
so that's what I do. Kitchen and bath design is my bread and butter, but I obviously also do, custom furniture and everything that goes inside your home. Some small offices, but most of the time I really want to be in the home because I love getting to know my clients and I really love to have that intimate relationship with them and make their space feel like them. So I don't really have a style. Everyone asks that. Do you have a style? What's your style that you design in? And my answer is the same always. My style is my client style. I want to know them and how they live. My style does not matter after I leave. I just want to save them from making decisions they're going to regret later or doing a design that's not going to look good in a couple of years. So I really try to be very timeless. So if anything, that's my style. It's timeless for my client. That means something different for everybody. So being able to start my own company and merge these two loves of business and design has really kind of put me in the perfect place, and it just feeds my juices, and I'm constantly invigorated by my career.
Well, that's awesome. And I think it is cool the way you've been able to combine this passion for business, but also, the creative side of you into, what has become a very, very successful business. And I like what you say about, you not really having a style. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know that much about interior design. My
Yeah.
style is like, I've got the clothes up off my floor. And that's looking good. But no, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense that, your style is your client style. And I like the way
Right.
that you put that is, it's all
Hmm.
about what your client wants, not what you want, because you're not the one that's going to be living there in the house once the
Right.
design's done. And I think one of the reasons you and I really kind of connected when we first met, because you're telling me about your business. And then, there's a lot of similarities between, one of the businesses my wife and I are in, our Shelf Genie
Hmm.
franchise. It's
Oh
very
yeah.
similar. We're coming in, we're designing solutions for our clients, and that's always been the biggest thing that separates us from any of our competitors, is that we make it all
Hmm.
about the client, right? It's all
Yes.
about what they need, and then we tailor a design to that. And one of the
Absolutely.
analogies my wife always uses with our designers is, you could have two clients with the exact same kitchen, right? The exact
Hmm.
same layout, but if
Right.
you're doing your job right as a designer, you should end up with two very different designs.
I
'Cause it's
absolutely
not,
agree.
yeah, it's not about the space, it's about how the
Right.
client wants to be able to use the space in our business. So,
It's true. Yeah. It's like I always say, I've never used the same backsplash tile twice. I mean, why would
yeah,
I? Because I don't have two clients that are at all the same. And, I had a big furniture delivery a couple of weeks ago, and she walked into her living room and she's like, I can't believe this. You found me in a sofa. Like, how did you find this space? Like, it's so me. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, I've never used that fabric before. I did some changes to the arm on the sofa, and the space is her. It lives and breathes how she is and who she is. And that feels so good. It's so invigorating. And then have a client just like, I mean, she'll still text me and be like, I love my space. She'll be having coffee in the morning. She'll be like, I love my space. I'm like, thank you. I needed that this morning. That is
isn't that
really
awesome?
encouraging. I love it. I love it so much. So
So
yeah, Shelf Genie is really similar to the industry that I'm in. And I think that across the board, that's what matters, is really connecting with your clients and hearing them and hearing what they're not saying. I tell my staff that all the time. People say words, they're saying something else as well. And you really have to get to know people, understand their body language, understand their, maybe their underlying issues with what's going on in their house and their desires, and then really get to the bottom of it. And it's the same for my franchise. One of the things that's even pushed me towards launching an interior design franchise is the fact that the thing that people come to me and say is like, I always wanted to be an interior designer. I would love to know what your life is like. I would love to have your life. I would love to do what you do. And, it's flattering, and I let it flatter me for a few years. And then it occurred to me, it's like, go do it. You're
right,
telling yourself what would make you
what's stopping
happy.
you? Yeah,
Go do it. Well, and then that's the challenge. I know exactly what's stopping them. There's a lot of barriers to entry to the interior design world. Now, who can break those down is somebody that's already in the industry.
that's
And so
right.
that's what I'm really hoping to do, is help people follow their dreams. That's what you do as Shelf Genie every day, right? And what Budget
Yep.
Blinds has done. These franchises really help people kind of, add water and stir and live the life that they want to live. And I love the power of franchising because of that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think about, when we got into our franchise, I mean, we could have started a business from scratch and been successful, but what it did
Hmm.
was it drastically decreased the learning curve for us, right?
Yes.
So we were
Yes.
able to plug into these very well established systems and processes that we could leverage to not only learn the business quicker, but ramp it up and get to
Hmm.
a point where we could really focus on growing the business versus having to come in and just figure it all out.
Right.
Figure out the processes, figure out the manufacturing side, the supply chain, all of that. Were
Hmm.
we capable of it? Probably, but it would have
Right.
taken a hell of a lot longer than it did. And it's not like,
Yeah.
it's not
I'm
like,
right there.
yeah. And so I think that's a really good point is, you meet a lot of people and they'd probably be fantastic interior designers,
Yes.
but, are they capable of, and even if they are, do they have the time and the runway to figure it all out for themselves?
Hmm.
And that's where the value of franchising really, comes in. And so, let's talk a little bit about how, when you've already shared that, you worked for your aunt's Subway franchises in
Yeah.
high school. That's cool.
Right.
But you actually own a franchise outside of, the interior design business that you're in the
Yeah.
process of franchising. So how did that come to happen?
It's so strange. I think just part of it is being in a small town. I was already known as an interior designer. I started my career working for a design build firm. My boss was a master builder.
Hmm.
So, you take the 4 years of college and then, in 18 months, he taught me way more than I could have ever imagined about the building industry, which I love. Like, I love construction. I really do. I love drawing plans. I love talking to contractors. It's just a really big passion of mine. So working for him was great. But when I decided to go out on my own, it's like it sent a ripple off in the entire town. Like, people found out, people knew I was on my own. I had people reaching out to me saying, "Can I work with you?" Because there
Wow.
was a different model. Like, my boss, just a great builder, but it was very specific. He would do kitchens and bathrooms within a certain demographic, right? So
Okay.
right away, I took a job, 45 miles from me that he would have never taken. But it was my very first client. It was her sister. So I actually did a kitchen remodel. I didn't do the construction. I did the design when I was a junior in college.
Wow.
And from that job, I have received so much more work because that family loves that space so much. And I love hearing them talk about it. And so I did her sister's house. And then it just kind of kept going where it's like, oh, Heather's on her own. Heather's on her own. And the Budget Blinds franchise called me. It was right around like October, getting ready into the Christmas time. And she had lost an employee and she said, "Will you just come work for me and come sell blinds?" She's like, "You got to be good at it. Like, it can't be that hard."
Yeah.
So
You're
it
doing
was
all
just
this other
fun.
stuff. I
You're
know you
doing
can
all
sell
this.
some
And
blinds.
yeah. And I had a couple clients, but definitely not enough to be like, yeah, I'm secure. I can keep working for myself. Like, I was
Sure.
like, yeah, Christmas is coming. Some extra cash
Right.
probably is a really good idea.
Yeah. I'll learn how
And
to sell
definitely,
blinds.
exactly. It's so funny because I look back at it now, just a wonderful couple that owned the Budget Blinds franchise. They started it actually originally. I think she was going into her 13th year. Wonderful woman. And I think she left too much to chance. She gave me too much leeway because blinds are different. That how you look at windows is different in kitchen remodeling than it is in blinds. So I think my first two jobs, I measured incorrectly, but she was so gracious. It's like, yes, I could run a tape measure, but not how she needed me to run a tape measure.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really funny to look back at now and laugh about. So,
Yeah.
so that happened. I started working for her, and then it just hit me like a lightning that how many homes they're in. And, of course, I have this huge marketing hurdle I need to get over with my own company. Like, how will I market my business? Who do I want to market to? Who do I want my clients to be? I go into these Budget Blinds homes and I'd be like, "You're my client. You're already spending money on your house. You're my client." And they would
How
talk to
perfect
me,
is that?
right? They're like, "Hey, I want to someday remodel my kitchen." I'm like, "Oh, who are you working with?" "No one yet." I'm like, "Oh, here's my
Perfect.
card. Here's my card. Here's my
Right.
card," right?
Yeah.
And so I started talking to her about that. And I was like, "You're going to all these homes. They're just ideal clients for me. And, if you just leave some marketing material, you don't have to do a hard sell or do any kind of ask, just leave materials." And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And then it came about that she was actually looking to retire from it. She'd grown it to a place where it was taking away from her family, and she was looking to, switch gears and do something a little bit more 9 to 5. And that was like November, December, January. I signed the documents on February 4th, and the company was mine. So 6 months into launching my own business, I was buying a second business and now running them in tandem. And the rest is like, here we are. So it showed me franchising. Definitely, when you would go to a Budget Blinds convention, I don't know if there's rumors around Budget Blinds people or not, but I went to a Budget Blinds convention. I didn't even go to Discovery Day. I went to convention, the five guys still owned it. It was, the energy's palpable, the family, the camaraderie, just everything about it. It really, I drank the Kool-Aid big time. Just such a wonderful, wonderful organization. And I still stand by it. It's such a wonderful organization and family and the friends that I've made, that I love that. And even, thinking about like companies going through crises and things going on in our economy, you have somebody to lean on. You have somebody to pull from, advice to get. Where launching my own business, if something goes wrong, I, go through a struggle or the economy dips, I'm on my own and I'm, figuring this out on my own. And not that I can't, like I really enjoy being challenged, but there's just such a unique feeling when across the country, there's somebody you can always pick up the phone and be like, hey, have you had this experience? How did you deal with it? Could you give me some advice? There's always somebody out there that has your back. And I love franchising because of that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's one that, because I've worked with a lot of people and helped them get into franchise businesses. And that's something that a lot of people seem to overlook. They're very focused on wanting to understand the business model, the economics, and all of that's important. And then they want to really understand the franchisor side of it. What am I going to get from the franchisor in terms of support, training, all of that? Again, equally important. But what so many people overlook is, what type of a culture are they getting involved in by becoming a franchisee with whatever brand it is, right? But when you're partnered with a very strong franchisor with a good culture, beyond how the franchisor is going to be able to help you, you've got all these other resources out there and the other franchisees. You've got a peer network that you're able to tap into, where just like you said, you can call up someone on the other side of the country. Hey, this just happened today. Have you ever had this? How did you handle it?
Exactly.
What would you recommend to someone in my position? We're going through all this stuff with the coronavirus right now, and it's a crazy time. We've had several town hall calls over the past week or so just with Shelf Genie franchise owners sharing ideas, things that they're trying, what's worked for them, what's not worked for them. It's very, very nice to have that kind of a support system behind you in the good times and the bad times. And one of the favorite terms that I've heard when it comes to franchising is that, when you buy a franchise, you're in business for yourself, but you're not in business by yourself.
I love that.
And I think that's a good way to think about it.
Absolutely. The American dream for a lot of people is to work for themselves. And I think, Oregon actually is a very entrepreneurial state. Most of my friends own their own business. Some of them are franchises. Some of them launched their own. And there's so much amazing information out there that, I love how Budget Blinds and franchise businesses, they bring you together and they help you realize that there's so much that experience out there, and there's so much that if you don't know, somebody else knows. And I don't know, especially going through this crisis, I can't say enough about just how, with my own company, I'm calling my vendors and I'm talking to my partners, seeing who's open, seeing what materials I can expect and all of this. Like, I'm doing that all on my own, where like with the Budget Blinds Corporation, I'm just getting emails of like, this is who's open, this is what we're doing for you, this is what we've negotiated. And I'm just like, I'm so profoundly impressed with how this crisis has been handled that, I'm not much of a worrier anyway. So I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about like, am I in a panic? I don't panic about very much. But it has really helped me sleep at night to just be like, man, somebody's there. Somebody has my back. So it's a really great feeling.
Yeah. And it's, when franchising is done right, it's in the franchisor's best interest to do all those things for their franchisees, because a good franchisor realizes that they are only as successful as their franchisees.
And it is the culture, like you said, culture. And I'm going to go back and put a shout out to that culture code book that I'm trying to beat everybody over the head with. Like, read that book. It's so good. I know, and it's not that different. My son's in his recruitment year right now for college baseball. And I keep telling him, it's like, yeah, there's all these schools you could play for, and there's all these places you could brag about playing for. But if you don't play for a coach you like, if you don't have the culture and the team and the atmosphere that you like, you're never going to be happy. And this is the next 4 years of your life. So choose culture over, whatever, like bragging rights or statistics or whatever. Like, you need to find a coach that you connect with. And I think that's the same for franchising. when you're shopping for a franchise, you need to find a culture that you connect with, somebody that you could talk to every day and just not want to gouge out their eyes or, lose
Yeah.
trust in them, or like, cause you're going to be connected to this company. You need to have faith in them and their business skills and know that, good and bad times, there's somebody there that you can talk to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good analogy. I mean, you want to find a franchise where you can drink the Kool-Aid too,
Yes.
and
Yes.
really get on board with it because,
Uh-huh.
you're essentially entering into a partnership, or I mean almost a business marriage with this company and the other franchisees. And,
Right.
to your point, you want to make sure it's people you can get along with and actually enjoy
Mhm.
working alongside of, and not, be miserable the whole time. Because then
Yeah.
you'll end up feeling like you're out on an island by yourself. You're not, going to be able to take advantage of all the support and resources that are
Mhm.
there, and it kind of defeats the whole point of being part of a franchise system at that point.
I
Um,
think the other thing that people forget too is when you purchase a franchise, you have a responsibility to your neighbors. I'm surrounded. Oregon's been sold out for franchises for as long as I've known. And my neighbors, rely on me to do good work, and I rely on them. So
that's right.
knowing that I don't, I know them, they're acquaintances. I'm not best friends with them, but they are people that I can call on. We can talk about, marketing. We can talk about challenges, and they are counting on me to uphold the integrity of that brand the
Yep.
same I'm counting on them. And again, that goes back to corporate culture. That goes back, like, everybody is expected to behave a certain way to uphold the brilliant name and branding and everything that's been built up, in this franchise for over 20 years. It all matters.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point, because with franchising, part of what you're getting is the brand that you're becoming a part of. And it
Right.
is the responsibility of each and every franchisee to make sure that they're representing that brand the right way. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why, franchisors have their agreements set up so that if they need to take action against a franchisee that's
Right.
operating outside of brand standards, or just, being a knucklehead and not doing what
Right.
they're supposed to be doing, because that's going to have a negative impact on every other franchisee that's out there doing what they should be doing,
That's right.
and representing the brand the right way. So I know
Yeah,
some of
it's
the people
true.
I work with, they read a franchise agreement, they're like, wow, this is pretty one-sided. And yeah, but you got to understand, it's like no franchisor in their right mind sitting around looking for a reason to call you out on the franchise
No.
agreement. It's there so they can protect the brand. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
so, I mean, you bring a very interesting perspective, because, you have this experience of starting your own business, building it from scratch, and that's been
Right.
very, very successful for you. And then you have this experience of buying into a franchise. And
Yes.
for you, you bought an existing franchise business that had already been up and running,
Mm-hmm.
but still all the same benefits, and then probably even more, because you had an established client base, and
Right.
just that business had been in that market for some time. So, what are some of the pros and cons, in your opinion, of startup business versus franchise business?
Oh, I think more than anything is just knowing the name, for franchising. Everyone already knew of Budget Blinds. And that can be good and bad, obviously. Like,
Yeah,
there's some unhappy clients that I have to be like, okay, well, but you have that in every industry, right? So you have to
sure.
take the good and the bad. And maybe we can win some over with we're the new owners, and maybe you can't. That's up for them to decide. I'm not here to manipulate anybody.
Right.
And I'm certainly not perfect in my own business. I'm sure there's a client out there that didn't enjoy me. It's going to happen. You serve
Probably
enough
only
people.
one, though.
It's going to happen.
No more than one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, having that brand, the weight of that brand is really important. I know, with Northwest Design House, it really was just kind of like falling into so many mistakes to learn. And I love being in a small town for that, because I could try new things. I've been able to
Yeah.
test theories and apply different attributes to my business. And the failure wasn't so far. And, again, like, I'm not really afraid of failure. So I would test different things, test different marketing methods, test different offerings. And so as I refined my business model, I just feel like, while Budget Blinds would give me ideas, it would also help me with things I don't want to do. And
Mhm.
so, I could just be like, oh, some of my best ideas come on an airplane. I'm trapped, I
Yeah.
don't want to talk to my neighbors,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know,
Headphones on.
headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of my best ideas. And so I'm thinking about, these flights that I've taken, these ideas. I come home hit the ground. My poor employees. I'm just like, okay, had this great idea. We're going to implement it tomorrow. Let's get going on this. And so,
They know
having
to
these ideas
they know to brace themselves every time you get back for a trip,
every
right?
time,
They're like, all right, the
they're like,
ideas are going to be
oh God,
flying. Yeah.
Heather's going to be real rested. Watch out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. And I feel like being able on my own company to test all these things and not have to go to corporate and go, can I try this?
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really important, especially because I'm creative, but I'm business creative. And business, you can't be terribly creative because it's a very black and white, like there's run business well, but there's also ideas you can do on like, how do you make your business stronger? How do you reach your clients? How do you get the messaging? And especially in interior design, there's a lot of confusion around like hiring interior designers, what that means. How does billing happen? What do I get for my money? How do I know you're working? There's all these
Right.
like
Yeah.
trust issues with interior designers and like, how do I go about this? I've never hired a designer. And so that's just really led me down this path of like, what would I want? If I knew nothing of this industry and I needed to buy a sofa, what kind of experience would I want? And then pulling from the Budget Blinds experience and then my own ideas of what I would want has really just created this like melting pot of what I think the ideal interior design firm is for the masses. We're not talking about, just the cardiac surgeon. We're talking about everyone. Whoever wants to buy a sofa, what kind of experience do they deserve? What kind of budget should you have to have? And it just kind of breaks down the walls of like, who deserves an interior designer? Who should hire an interior designer? Why should I work with one? So I've absolutely loved having my own firm to test all of that. And really only I can tell myself no, and I'm not going to do that. So, and it's okay if it fails. It's okay to be wrong. And my employees say this all the time. We try it once, it doesn't work. We know it didn't work. Try it twice, that didn't work. Like, that's just kind of our methodology throughout the whole business. Let's try it. See if it works.
Well, I think it's brilliant. I mean, you've set yourself up so that you can start a business that you're passionate about, but do it the way that you want to do it, right? You're putting your
Right.
own touch to this. And I think, by creating an interior design experience that is maybe more affordable or, less intimidating for a lot of people out there that would probably not normally think of themselves as being interior design clients. I mean, you're opening yourself up to a huge audience. And, it seems to me, again, I'm not an expert in interior design, but it seems like you're positioning yourself very well as you're preparing to franchise the company to really kind of, in a lot of ways, revolutionize the interior design industry.
I sure hope so. I have other business owners call me frequently that are trying to launch their interior design business. And, I hear the frustration in their voice. They're just looking for advice. Somebody mentioned my name and they're, whatever, pass along, go talk to Heather. And, I hear the frustration because they're just like, how are you making money? Like, right. Well, if you're not making money, how are you eating?
Yeah.
And
if
the
you're
point
not
of the
making
matter
money,
is
you have a hobby. Congratulations.
Well, and that's the thing that I tell them, like the minute your company is revolved around trading time for dollars, that is not a business. You might as well get a job because then you have one boss. When you have your own business and all you're doing is trading time for money, you now have what, 12, 15 bosses?
Yes.
Just to get through the day, just to pay your mortgage, just to do all this. So you're actually not, going back to your brilliant business name, you're not experiencing any freedom.
That's right.
There's no freedom there. You've actually just gone and multiplied how many people you're now responsible to, and you're making yourself crazy. So when they call and they're like, how are you making money? How can I make money at this? I'm like, well, not how you're currently doing it. How you can make money is getting into franchising. And then that is how you'll make money in interior design.
Yeah. I mean, or at least setting the business up so that it's scalable in some way. So to your point, because what you've been able to do with your interior design business is build a business that works for you, even if you're not working that particular day or that particular week or whatever the case may be. And that's how you can really establish freedom, in your life through business ownership. It means that you're not tied to an office or a desk or a location.
Right.
And just if you're not, quote unquote, on the clock, you're still in a position to make money. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think you've done what a lot of interior designers seem to have struggled to do. I mean, we work with some interior designers here in our area and refer business back and forth with them. And, I would say most of them, for lack of a better way of putting it, they've bought themselves a job, through
Yeah.
starting an interior design business. They're kind of, a one pony show.
Yeah, and I don't mean any disrespect, because at the same time, if they're doing what they love,
Yeah.
maybe that's enough. But you go back to this concept of not working a job but having a business and a career. What you're supposed to be building is a legacy. You're supposed to be building a future. And at the end of this, let's say you've been a designer for 30, 35 years, and you're ready to retire, and you've been trading time and for money this entire time, and maybe you've stocked away some money in a 401k or whatever. But here's the real problem. What is the value of your asset at the end of this? Invest in a franchise, invest in a Shelf Genie, a Budget Blinds, whatever it may be, a Coluna interior design franchise. What you have at the end of this when you retire is an actual company that has brand recognition across the nation, that can be valued by a business analyst.
Yep.
And actually put to market the same way you would any other investment, right? We're building assets here. That's what we're doing through business, is buy your assets. And so I think, like I said, I mean no disrespect to those that are just running the one man, trading time for money. But I do feel like if my passion in life is to empower women to be able to own their own future, then I have to show them how to develop a business model that's going to actually be worth something. Yep. When they're ready to walk away, or legacy it to a child and their family, or whatever it may be.
Yep.
Figure out a way that you actually have something at the end of it, and not just a Rolodex or a CRM full of contacts. Those don't sell for much anymore.
No, it's not worth it.
They just don't. Our world is too connected. Do you remember those days? You're probably too young, but there were literally days where people were selling businesses based on who was in their Rolodex. I've got 10,000 contacts. What will you give me for it? I'll give you $15,000. Okay, you're telling me after 30 years of work, my business that I built is worth $15,000?
Yeah, but it's crazy. It's such a good point that you bring up, and I agree with you. Like, no disrespect to anyone that is running kind of a solo, preneur type business, because for a lot of people, that's a lot better than working for someone else, right? Because at the end of the day, they do only answer to themselves. They probably are doing, what they enjoy doing. So, respect everyone that's doing that. But if your goal is to truly, build a business that's working for you, use that to take better control of your life and to give yourself more freedom and flexibility, you've got to set the business up so that it's scalable. And that's exactly what you're doing, is you're building an asset at that point that, you can later exit or, pass on to one of your children or someone in the family. And, and look, there are franchise businesses out there that are, truly kind of buy yourself a job type opportunity. And for a lot of people, it's a great option, right? But for the people that are really looking to build something bigger than just themselves, that's where, getting into a franchise, or at least thinking through your business model. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that you've got to buy a franchise if you want to get into business for yourself. There's plenty of great businesses you could start without a franchise. But at least think through the business model and think about how you're going to set it up so that it can scale beyond just you. Because at the end of the day, if you as the business owner are responsible for all of the production that the business produces, generates, no one in their right mind is going to pay you a premium for that, because they know as soon as you leave, they've got to replace all of the production that you've been generating yourself.
That's right. That's right.
We got into that on another podcast with a different guest, and it's worth talking about again, because it's a mistake that happens a lot. So you kind of hit on this earlier, but I'd like to take a deeper dive into it. What are some of the things that you've learned through being a franchisee with Budget Blinds that you've then been able to apply in your design house business, and then vice versa? I'd be interested to hear, what did you learn building design house that you were able to apply to your Budget Blinds business?
I think the biggest thing is systems. So when you systemize your business, which is actually really easy to do, like everything has a process, everything has a step. And so when, even just in training employees, before I even thought about franchising, it's like, well, how do I train them? How do I onboard them? How do I teach them to think like I think and treat my clients how I want them to be treated and all of these things? Well, It's, first culture and then systems. So you
Yep.
establish all these systems. And budget plans has definitely taught me that there is a system for everything. There's a document for everything. There's,
Yep.
Some rule book somewhere. And then to that point, it's knowing your demographic and knowing your clientele well enough when to throw the systems out the window and which ones to really apply. And so
Yeah.
I don't pretend for 1 minute that all the systems I'm developing for my design firm in Oregon are going to fit everyone in Ohio. I
Sure.
don't believe that. And that's where I feel like, when I'm looking for business partners in the franchise system, I'm looking for people that really understand where they're from, understand where they live, their demographic, understand their neighborhood, understand these things so they can apply their own personal stamp on their franchise and just really put their own personal spin on it. Yes, we'll have systems in place that they can apply. We'll have rules. We'll have all these things that they can lean on
Yep.
if they struggle or if they're confused. But at the end of the day, 3, 4, 5 years into it, they should have their own spin on it, and they should be running a business that really is a reflection of their guidelines, their culture, their heart, who they are. And it will really resonate with their clients much more than just systems.
Yeah, that's smart, I think too, because you're already thinking through this before you've even got any franchisees, but that'll
Yeah.
be no, but it's smart. I mean, that'll be part of your culture, right? Yes, we
Yes.
have systems, we have procedures. These things are going to help you, get your business open and get it ramped up quicker than in all likelihood you'd be able to do if you were doing this on
Mm-hmm.
your own. But at the same
Yeah.
time, you don't want it to be so rigid of a system that you've got a bunch of robot franchisees out there
Yeah.
and no one's innovating, no one's thinking
Right.
outside of the box. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
any good franchise organization, any good company for that matter, has got to continue to grow and innovate. And one of the best ways that they can do that is by the people that are out there in the field in front of the clients. They're the ones that are going to really have the brilliant ideas of how we
It's
can
true.
pivot, how we can change, how we can look at this a little bit differently. So, um,
Yeah, it's so true.
yeah, I think that's a good point, and something I know I try to advise people when they're researching a franchise is obviously you want the systems and processes to be there, but at the same time you want to feel comfortable, and it goes back to what we were talking
Yeah.
about with culture, but you want to feel comfortable that you will have the ability as a franchisee to be creative and to put your
Mm-hmm.
own touch and your own personality onto the business. And
Yeah.
I would say most franchise companies that I've worked with are definitely open to that and encourage that
Mm-hmm.
from their franchisees.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart that you're thinking that way, at this stage in the game for, your Kaluna
Yeah,
interior
one of the
design
things I've
engineering
been
place.
part of developing the franchise, and I kind of already touched on it before, is really the software piece of it. If there's anything that I learned going to these IFA events and talking to other successful franchises, is that you have to have some kind of support network for how they're going to run their business, how they're going to communicate, how they're going to network and understand vendors. And so one of the things that I kind of threw myself into was, hiring the right engineers and designing out this software that's going to build and support the business. And luckily, I had that software experience that I could infuse into this. And I had,
Yeah.
sketches and sketches of what I thought this would look like. And then so hiring the right engineering team became relatively simple. And so we've been working on developing this. And I think one of the most important things about this software is how interconnected it's going to create all of us. So if you can imagine, 200 franchisees spread all over the US running their little individual businesses under my name, let's talk about how they can communicate. Let's talk about how they can collaborate. How can they
Yeah.
learn from one another? It's just built into the software. It's part of the culture. It's who we are. It's expected, actually, to communicate and to talk about what's going on across the nation, what's going on within our franchise system, because I will never have all the lock on the good ideas. Good ideas come from the most obscure places, and everyone has something to contribute. And so I want that kind of contribution to be a part of the culture of this franchise. So we're always making each other better. Your system is always improving, and we're testing new theories and becoming better as a group.
Yep.
Not just saying, well, they're killing it in Texas. What are they doing? Like, we already know what they're doing. We're already testing it in our market. We don't have to wait till our once a year meetings to hear what Texas is doing to kill it. We've already known. We've already see what they're doing, and we're going to, adapt that to our own area. So it's part of the software that I'll be rolling out as part of the franchise launch.
Well, let me know when you're ready to roll, and don't sell Wilmington, North Carolina. It's something I
Okay.
want to be a part of. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a good segue into the next question I wanted to ask, because, we already talked a little bit about the similarities between, your business and our Shelf Genie business. So I could
Yeah.
see, us adding an interior design business as a very nice complement to what we're doing right now.
Absolutely.
We're
Hmm.
in the process of launching a garage organization business, and that's
Oh,
actually,
cool.
yeah, it's through a dealership, so it's not a franchise.
Hmm.
And that works for us now because we've been a part of a franchise. We've learned the systems and processes that work for this business. Now we can
Yeah,
take a very complementary service, plug it into the processes we already have in place, and it should ramp very quickly, assuming
that's great.
coronavirus hurries up and gets out of
I know.
here.
Yes, that's great.
But,
I love it.
so I think it was brilliant what you did, and credit to you for taking a massive risk, 6 months into starting this interior design business. You bought an existing franchise business, but it's brilliant, right? I mean, you saw the
Hmm.
opportunity. You're like, this business is putting me in homes of people that are perfect for
Hmm.
this other business. And
Right.
I love finding ways that people can get into complementary businesses where they can
Absolutely.
each other.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit more about, how you've been able to, create synergy between the two businesses, and use each of them to grow at the same time.
Yeah, I think that my design firm has always been kind of repeat and referral clients, and so because of the brand strength of Budget Blinds, it's getting me into homes that maybe don't know that I own a design firm, and so
Yeah.
dropping that name and saying, I can help you with that has really fed this business to be, to grow at the rate that it's growing at. So that's just been a really great opportunity. And I think that even if I didn't own the Budget Blinds, that would definitely have been a partnership I would have reached out to, because every room we were remodeling, every room that we design, it has a window. So work with a pro, right? Same with like, if my clients aren't going to do a huge kitchen gut, or they're looking to just make some modifications, of course, bring in Shelf Genie and talk about how we can make their kitchen impactful, how we can really make the changes that make their space the way they want it to be. So I love that kind of collaboration. I think it's wonderful. And then so earning clients through Budget Blinds is really helpful. I do remember the day though that Design House brought a client to Budget Blinds. I mean, you wouldn't think it would happen, because Budget Blinds obviously in a lot more homes. We may be running, 100 clients a month through Budget Blinds. And in Design House, we're probably running more like 15 clients. So
Right.
there's a huge disparity of how much design work we can handle, obviously, because
Sure.
it takes more time. But you look at that and you think, oh, okay, Budget Blinds, man, it's just our moneymaker. It's like, the day it happened, the day I went in for a design, and they're like, we really need to do something with the windows throughout the house. I'm like, yes,
You're like, yes, I actually have a
finally.
blinds company.
I know. I can actually, they're like, oh, you do? I'm like, did you know I own the Budget Blinds? Are you just messing with me? They're like, we had no idea you own Budget Blinds. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
Finally.
Well, I mean, it's, in any business, I think there's opportunity to set up referral partnerships. Those are
Yes.
great. I mean,
Hmm.
referrals are gold in just about any
Yeah.
type of business, but it's always better if you can just own the other business, because, I mean, look, at the end of the day, even if you've got a really, really strong referral partnership,
Hmm.
you're not top of mind with that other
No,
business owner all the time, right? You
exactly.
got to
Yeah.
work really hard to stay, top of mind,
Hmm.
and so you're always top of mind with yourself, right? I mean, you're not going to miss
Yes.
an opportunity to refer business to your other business.
To
Those
yourself. Right.
the
Oh, it's
cracks.
true.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, even with Shelf Genie, like they're rolling out another franchise to get into closet organization,
Nice.
and we've been piloting that. So that's another business
Yeah.
that we're ramping up right now, and it's easy,
Yeah.
because I mean, I say it's easy. It's my wife would probably disagree, but she's the one doing all the work.
She's
But
doing it.
yeah, it's just amazing how many people are like,
Right.
"Oh, you do closets too? Yeah, come on, let's go look at the closet." Like while
Yep.
we're already there, and
I
then
love that.
we kept getting asked about garages, so we're like, "Well, let's just start a garage business." And
Mhm.
I think it just goes to show that if you do a good job with your clients, I don't care what the business is, but if you do a good job of providing a fantastic product or service, going above and beyond,
Mhm.
exceeding their expectations, most people are loyal, and they're like, hey, what else can you do for me? I'm
Right.
so impressed with
Yeah.
what you've done over here. What else can you do for me?
It's
And
true. And they'd rather work with you again than have to go through vetting another person all over again. Like that's,
yeah,
you're already in their home.
yeah, it's like you're rolling the dice every time you work with a
It's
new,
true.
company that you've never worked with before. So,
Yeah.
no, I think that's really, really, interesting and brilliant, really, what you've been able to do with the two companies, and it's also, you're getting an inside look into how franchising works, and so,
Right.
as you go to franchise Kaluna, you've kind of got a blueprint in terms of
Yeah.
what you need to do to make sure you're ready. So let's
Right.
talk a little bit more about Kaluna. So
Mm-hmm.
where did the idea stem from to take your design house business and franchise it? And how long has this kind of been in the works?
I think I went to my first IFA event in February of 2019, maybe. Is that when we met?
That was in
Uh,
Vegas, right?
yes, yes,
Yep.
in Vegas.
Yep.
Yeah. So really, I, of course, I understand the structure of the business of franchise through budget blinds, but I really wanted to understand the industry and get a good sense of like what this would look like to even launch a franchise. Way overwhelming. So I just booked a plane ticket, bought a ticket to this event, and started attending things and talking to people as if I belonged there. It was like I've gone to a lot of shows. That was probably the most nerve-wracking show because I really had no idea what I was doing there. So meeting friendly faces like you, talking to people, and making some contacts. The wonderful thing that I experienced there, though, I just want to segue about this, is just, the franchise industry too, is such a big family.
Yeah.
I would tell people what I'm doing, and like literally someone would grab my arm, drag me over to go meet somebody I had to meet right that minute.
Yeah.
And so by the time I left I know, it's just like this huge family. They want to see you succeed, right?
Yep.
If franchising businesses succeed, we all succeed. And so I met all these people. By the time I left that event, I had hired my attorney, I'd hired my franchise company, I'd met you, I'd met some other people that I get to look forward to seeing at these events all the time. So it's just a great experience. But really, this has been building up for a long time because as my company grew, scaling is always the challenge. Scaling your company, no matter what business you're in, is always a challenge. I'm hiring the right people. And what I came to realize, and I always joke like I'm not a manager, I really don't love managing people because I like to mentor people. I like to coach people. I like to lead people. It's a lot different than managing. And so even with my staff that I have now, it's very much that I'm looking for business partners, which is hard to do. It's really hard to do when, they're not vested. No one's vested in this. No one's bearing the burden of any of the risk, right?
Yep. No skin in the game.
No, not at all. So it's always been very hard to scale my interior design firm. And so I realized that really what I'm looking for is business partners. What I'm looking for is to empower people to run their own firm. And so you couple that with how much people tell me they wish they did what I did, you just mix that up and pretty soon there's the answer. The answer is franchising, right? It's the only thing that makes sense. If I can show people how to run their own business and how to make money at it without telling them what to do, because I don't want to tell them what to do. I want them to just, do the design they love to do, be passionate about their work, get out of bed every morning and love their life. Great.
Well, and by giving them a franchise model, you're removing that barrier that keeps the vast majority of people from ever taking that first step of getting into business for themselves, which
That's
is
right.
the first step, right? Is okay,
Yeah,
what do I
right.
do first, right? Well, when you buy a
Mm-hmm.
franchise, you get the playbook. All right,
You
this is
do.
step one, this is step two, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're removing that barrier, and it makes it a lot easier for people to actually take the leap and get into business for themselves. And then to your point, you're not managing people, you're in a
Mm-hmm.
partnership with people. They're vested.
Right.
It's in their best interest that they get up and do the work every single day. You don't always have that with employees or even like contractors. We work with a lot of contractors, which in my opinion is better than employees, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's not quite the same as having, someone that's really, really invested financially, and running their own
Right.
business. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Um, one thing I want to have you share your thoughts with, because you're clearly a person, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, once you've got a goal, you're not going to let anything get in your way.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you're human
Yeah.
too, right?
Right.
So, you go through the same things we all do in terms of the head trash. And, I'm sure you've
Yes.
made a lot of big moves, and you're making big moves as we speak.
Right.
How do you get past the fear, the uncertainty, the doubt that, inevitably pops up here and there
Hmm.
especially when you're taking big risk and making moves like you're doing. What are some of the things that you've learned to help you get past it? And what advice would you give to any aspiring entrepreneurs out there that are kind of, they know what they want to do. They want to get into business for
Right.
themselves, but they're paralyzed. They're stuck.
Yeah, it's true. I think the biggest thing that I've learned to recognize is like, you can't stop the negative talk. Like everybody has it. Everyone has this torturous voice in their head that tells them how much they suck. We're not sure why it crops up. And I know for everybody it has to be this way. Like some days that voice is gone. Like
Yeah.
you're just killing it. You just feel amazing. You're in your flow, right? And there are other days you're just like, what is happening? I
Yeah.
can't think one positive thing about myself. And so what I've done is just really learn to recognize that. I call it out as if it's a persona all its own. It is not me. I don't believe those things about myself. I don't believe I'm going to be a failure. But if I call it out and then challenge it the way I would a nasty person saying something about me, to be
Yeah.
like, you're actually asking yourself, is that valid? Is that
Right.
thought about me valid? And what it comes back to is all those fears, all that negativity, all that negative self-talk. If you can just call it out and be like, that's actually not true. None of it's
Yeah.
true.
It's so
It,
far
you
from
just,
the truth.
it's so far from the truth. So by just like giving it its own like energy, it's not me. It's definitely not me. I just feel like I can call on it and be like, wow, like why is that cropping up? It doesn't really matter. It's just not true and it's not productive. So the quicker I can just squelch all of that, the
Yes.
faster I'm back to being me. And so I really like I have those moments. Don't get me wrong. Like I definitely have moments, and especially with what's going on now, I find myself getting sad about the medical community, and that kind of dips me down into worries and stresses. And I can snap out of it so much faster now because those fears, there's nothing valid about them. Now, let's say there's a fear that is valid, right?
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
you said, like I am risking a lot. I'm designing this software, which is a significant expense. It's a significant investment for me, and I put myself at the very end of failure, or what would it look like if this doesn't work, right? And so I look at it like, okay, if the software doesn't work or it doesn't work for my franchise, the franchise doesn't lie. I like going to the worst case scenario. It makes
Yes.
me very comfortable. I get to that worst case scenario and I'm like, well, if I don't franchise my business and I just have this badass interior design firm in Oregon, I sure have the coolest software around.
That's
I
right.
mean, I
Or
mean,
or
my
you could
clients
go,
love it.
you could
I could
license
sell
the
it.
software. You can
I
license
could.
the software. There's any
There's
number of
so
them.
many opportunities. Yeah. Cause there's, like I did a lot of research on software. I tried to buy something. I really did. I tried to find some solution out there that wouldn't take me down this very expensive path. And there's just nothing that meets my business model. And so I had to design it myself. And this is the biggest investment I've ever made in myself, even more than buying budget blinds. This is the largest investment I've made in one of my ideas. And, it did come with a lot of risk, but I have zero regret. And even if this doesn't pull off, I just feel like it's probably the best experience. I'm learning so much about me, about business, with my engineers that I'm working with. Yeah. So, and even now, so what's going on now with the coronavirus, I'm definitely looking at my playbook saying, if this goes on for 2 more weeks, what is my life? Let's say a month, two
Hmm.
months, 3 months, 4 months. Like I'm looking at that and I'm working my way backward. So
Yeah.
I'm understanding the worst case scenario of how I'm going to get through this with my company, my clients, my employees. And it's really helping me just call out what's true instead of sitting there feeling sorry for myself, like, oh, what if that doesn't do anybody any good? It's just
Yeah.
negative. I hate negative energy.
Well, I mean, I love what you're saying. And I actually did a podcast episode a couple weeks ago that's all about an exercise that I've learned. I mean, I learned it through Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim
Oh yeah.
Ferriss.
Yep. For
He did
4 hour
it.
work week.
Yeah, but he did a TED talk on this exercise that he calls fear setting.
Mm.
And it's just that, right? It's like, all right, if you've got this thing, right? This business you're thinking about starting, or this big investment in software you're thinking about making, but you're worried about it, you're scared.
Mm-hmm.
This is an exercise you can kind of go through to figure out, all right, is this something that, this fear is reasonable and I shouldn't take action, or is it unreasonable and I should take action? And so he kind of
Yeah.
has you go through this whole process where you figure out what is the absolute worst case scenario. And then you plan out, what do I do if the worst
Right.
case scenario actually were to play out? And like 9 times out of 10, you're going to realize like, okay, number one, the worst case scenario is not nearly as bad as I imagine it in my head. Number
Yes.
two, it's very, very unlikely that the worst case scenario were to
Yeah.
actually play out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've used it myself plenty of times, and it's amazing how it just gives you clarity and a different perspective. And you kind of see it's mostly head trash, right? It's
It
mostly
is.
these
Yeah.
crazy ideas I'm conjuring up in my head that are so
Hmm.
unlikely to actually happen. And even if they were to, I could within 10 minutes figure out what I need
Hmm.
to do to bounce back from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a lot like, scenario planning. So when I was going
Yeah.
down this franchise road, I was just like, writing out like some of the scenarios that could happen, like that could be challenging or could crop up. Because I don't know about you, like, I have these business owners in my community and I have friends and family that I talk to about this idea, but they're so encouraging. They're just like, you can do anything you set your mind to, Heather. I'm like, okay, but can we punch some holes in this boat, please? Would
Yeah.
somebody please deal with me and
Yeah.
help me sink my ship? Because I want to try to set up these scenarios so I'm ready for it. And I'm not just like head in the clouds, like I can do anything. Like I can do anything I put my heart and soul into. But that doesn't mean it's going to be without challenge. And I want to be
Sure.
realistic about that. And also, every time there is a challenge, I'm so clear about getting every single opportunity out of that challenge, learn what I'm supposed to learn, and grow through it, and not look at it like a failure or a setback. Because if you're learning and you're finding opportunity, there really are no failures.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that keeps people from taking action, especially with something like starting a business, is they're afraid to fail. So I
Right.
think if you can shift your mindset and redefine failure, where,
Yes.
to me, failure is falling down and not getting back up,
Yeah.
right? It's not falling down. Everyone's going to fall
No.
down, right?
Yes.
It's getting back up, taking note of what you learned from
Mm-hmm.
stumbling and falling down, doing your best to make sure it doesn't happen again, but you keep moving forward. And that's not
Right.
failure, right? So I think if you can, redefine failure, then it becomes a lot less scary, to say, all right, well, if I
Mm-hmm.
try this, what happens if I fail?
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's a good point. And I like what you started off saying too, which is, you're going to have the negative thoughts, the negative
You are.
self-talk. Everybody has it. It's learning to recognize it, acknowledge it for what it is. And then you can very quickly refocus, on the
Mm-hmm.
positive. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's been an absolute game changer for me over the last couple of years. I mean, for me, I started meditating, and I'm not talking like, sitting down, legs crossed, like Buddhist meditating, anything like
Mm-hmm.
super spiritual. I'm talking like 10 minutes in the morning with my headphones on with an app that just reminds me
Yeah.
to focus on my breathing.
I
Right.
love it.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, it's very simple, but it's amazing how big of an impact it's had for me where,
I
your
love that.
mind's going to drift. It always does. It's
Mm-hmm.
recognizing it and then recentering your focus. For me, it's on the breath. Right. But
Yeah.
then, 10 minutes of that in the morning, I can tell a huge difference whether I've done it or not done it in terms of how my day goes and how
I
productive
love
and how
that.
focused I can stay. And that works for me, right? That might not
Yeah.
work for
Right.
everyone, but it's the same
Mm-hmm.
concept, which is you're recognizing when your mind wanders or when you have those negative thoughts, you acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
them, and then you just kind of brush right by them and you keep on going about your business.
It's so true. I love that. Yeah, it's something too that, I've infused into my company with my employees, that I let them see me fail. I talk about failure, we celebrate it. And,
Yeah.
when you're working with people, whether it's, bringing a franchisee into your franchise system or hiring an employee for your business, even just in raising my kids, like, recognize that there's a value to failure, and we're all coming from a different place, a different experience, and we're going to fail at different things. And
Yep.
those failures are super valuable. And so, definitely my employees know that perfection is not something I ever want. I want to talk about the failures. We don't hide anything. We definitely throw them out on the table, and we, pick through them and see where we could have been better, and help that everybody is learning from them, so it potentially doesn't happen again. It may still happen again, but it wouldn't be because we brushed it under the rug and acted like it didn't happen. We
Yeah.
definitely just want to push through that and grow through that. So
Yeah.
something my son said to me once, he's like, I remember the first time I saw that you weren't perfect, Mom. And I'm like, man, I made it that long? What are you talking about, dude? I'm like, I need to be sure you understand just how imperfect I am and talk more about. I have tons of failures and I want them to see that so they just know how acceptable it absolutely is.
Yeah. Well, I know just from talking with you, your sons are great baseball players, and
Yeah.
um, I'm sure that's been valuable lessons for them to learn along the way too. Or your
Mm-hmm.
one son's on his way to playing college baseball, right?
Yes, he
Yeah.
is.
So I'm
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
him being able to learn from you that, look, failure is just part of it. Whether you're on
Yeah.
the field or off the field, that's part of it. I'm sure that's been, huge in helping him excel in his athletic career.
Well, and you're bringing it full circle here because where a lot of people fail is in their mind first, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're talking about this negative self-talk, and you can set yourself up for failure. I'm a real big proponent about the power of positive energy and positive thoughts, and what you put out in the universe is what's going to come back. And it all begins in your mind. If you wake up every day thinking that this isn't going to work, you're damn right. It's
Yeah.
not going to work.
Yeah, if you're putting out negative energy, that's the level that you're putting yourself on, right? If
That's
you're
right.
putting out
Yeah.
positive energy, you raise your levels, and you can
Mm-hmm.
expect to get more positivity in return.
Right.
That same TED talk I mentioned earlier that Tim Ferriss did.
Yeah.
And this is my subtle way of trying to get Tim Ferriss on the podcast. I keep
Yes.
dropping his
I
name
love
like
him.
in multiple podcasts,
Yeah.
right? So tell him, Tim, you ought to come on the podcast.
Totally.
But no, he quotes an ancient Stoic philosopher, but he says, we suffer more in imagination than in reality,
Oh,
which
I
to
love
me,
that.
like, that really hit home, because it's like
Mhm.
the vast majority of the negative thoughts going through your head, they're never going to play out. It's
That's
just
right. They're
crazy
not.
stuff that we make up in
Mhm.
our heads. And, the
Yeah.
sooner you can recognize that, move past it, refocus on positive things,
Mhm.
um, then you can get back to business. So,
Yeah.
um, this has been awesome. I could sit here and talk to you forever, but I know you've got a lot to do. So let's jump into the lightning round. I've got a few
Sure.
questions that I like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast, and then we'll let you go. So, first question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? And that could be in life or in business.
Is surround yourself with great people. Um, but that also the other side of that coin is to recognize when some people aren't great for you.
Yeah.
And that's been a real hard lesson in my life that, you end up thinking and being a lot like the people that are in your life. And so,
Hmm.
just not just in terms of my mentors, but who you listen to, who you surround yourself with. And I'm always sure that I want people in the room that are much smarter than me,
Yeah.
that have some piece of information that they also are thinkers that want to grow. I think that that's important to always be around people that have something to contribute to your growth, and then you hopefully are also contributing to their growth. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think you can even extend that to, the books you read, the
Yes.
music you listen to, what you're watching on TV, the podcast you
Influence.
listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you being influenced every day? So if you have trouble with your negative self-talk, definitely look at the content you're consuming. What are you
Yes.
watching before you go to bed? What books are you reading? Who are you listening to? What are
Yeah.
you eating?
Yeah.
Maybe there's just something in your diet. You're just eating junk, so you feel like junk. Like, there's so many things that can affect your mood and your positivity and your passion. So it all matters. It all adds up.
Yeah. And the people that you are spending the most time with are going to have an impact on that. If you're hanging out with people that eat like crap, you're probably going to eat like crap, right?
That's
If
right.
you hang out
Mhm.
with people that smoke a pack a day, you probably smoke a pack a day. Like, it's just
Right.
kind of how it
Yes.
goes, right?
It's
So,
so true. It's so
yeah.
true. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Well, I love that one. Next question. Do you have a morning routine? And if so, do you mind sharing that with us?
I wish. I dream of having a morning routine, and I've sketched it out a few times. I know all the greats have them, and I want one. But especially lately, I've been giving myself grace, and I've been getting up and enjoying my morning with a book and a cup of coffee, or sometimes I hop on my laptop and shoot out emails right away. So right now, as much as I want one, it's a discipline I'm not focused on because I've got so many other things. And it's interesting because
I
how
think
much
you
I
do
want
have
it
a
is like
morning
bounce.
routine.
Yeah.
You do.
It's my time is what it is. Like,
That's
I
right.
don't want to demand. I don't want anybody telling me where to be, what to do. So I give myself a good 3-4 hours in the morning, even if that means I'm getting up at 4:35 to do it. I want that quiet time for me and how I'm feeling. Sometimes it's, turning on my Sonos system throughout the house and just jamming out to music. Sometimes it's popping into a book and sipping coffee. Sometimes it's on my laptop, and it's choosing for me how I want to start my day.
So, I would say that's a morning routine, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you mentioned all the greats have it. And one of the reasons I like to ask this question is I've picked up on that same theme, right? You talk to,
yeah,
any super successful person, they have some sort of a routine, but it's
they do.
different for everyone. I think it's less
Hmm.
important what the actual activities are, but the fact that you have an idea of how you want to start your
Sure.
day, and it puts you in the right frame of mind to accomplish everything else that you need to accomplish in the day. And so for you,
Yeah,
it's having a couple hours to yourself to read a book
yeah,
or listen to some music or whatever, but that puts you in the right state to then go out and accomplish your day, right? For me,
that's
it's a little
true.
bit different, but I can tell you for a fact, if I don't go through my morning routine, my day is not nearly as productive as it is when I do. um,
Yeah.
and so I think it's just
No, that's
about
a good point.
figuring out what works for you. It's going to
Yeah.
be different for everyone. Um,
That's a really
so
good point.
you learned something new today. You do, in fact, have a morning routine.
Yes.
Speaking of reading, what book are you reading right now?
Oh, which am I reading? I'm reading a lot of books. Right now for enjoyment, like just for casual reading, is Becoming. I'm dove into Michelle Obama's book. I'm
Yeah.
so
Okay.
loving that right now. And then for my business book, I always have a couple going, one for casual and one for business. I'm reading one about what's it called? The Experience Effect. It's John
Hmm.
Joseph, and I'm really into retail right now, understanding retail, understanding how we engage clients in the buying decision. So I've
Hmm.
been diving into whatever content I can. And then on Audible, what did I just finish up? I can't remember. Oh, I've been running through Jack Welch's library again on Audible because he just died, and I think he's a brilliant, brilliant CEO and just such
Yeah.
great insight. So yeah, I always have multiple books going on every single avenue. I've got
I
I
know we were
consume content like mad. We talked about this.
we were
Like, are
joking
we the
about it.
only? Yeah, other people do this, right? No one listens to the Audible book at one time speed. Like, how do you
No,
do
why
that?
why would you do that? We were
Why
talking
would you do
before we
that?
started recording. I was like, I usually have 2 to 3 books going, and I love
Mhm.
Audible because I just crush through books. I'm like
Yeah,
1.8 speed. Although I've
yeah.
realized if the author has an English accent, I have to slow it down a little bit. Uh,
Oh,
for
yeah.
whatever reason, I've read a couple books
Uh
with English accents, and I'm like 1.5 speed for that. But
huh. That's
either way,
funny.
you get through it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And then the book that you're highly recommending that everyone read,
Culture Code. Culture
Culture Code.
Code.
All right.
Must read it. Yeah, it's just so good. So yeah,
Well, that was on my list. I think it just bumped up to
yeah.
number one, so I'll tackle that one
Good.
next. All right. So, last question for you today.
Hmm.
What is your definition of freedom, and are you living it?
I'm working towards it for sure. I'm a little bit geographically bound right now as I finish raising my kids, but definitely I'm working towards being able to work from anywhere. Like, I definitely feel like as a franchisor, I want to be on the road. I want to be in the field talking to my franchisees. I want to be able to work mobile on my laptop, connecting with people, and probably still designing. But I don't feel like design has to happen in one location.
Yeah.
So that is my goal. Like, I love to design home, but for me, home means a lot of different places. I love North Carolina. I love Tennessee. I love parts of Washington.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine staying in one city once I'm done raising my kids, and that will be my freedom.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
exciting, and I think you're well on your way. So, look, I really appreciate you coming on
Of
today. I
course.
know everyone listening in is just, awestruck by everything that you're doing. You're an inspiration, but I think, everyone that listens in is going to be able to take at least one or two things, that they can actually apply, wherever they're at on their own path to freedom. And so I appreciate you coming on. Really looking forward to staying in touch with you, seeing how things go. Very excited for you. I'm here to help in any
Thank
way that
you.
I can. But Heather, really appreciate you dropping into the Path to Freedom podcast with us.
Thanks for having me, Wes. I'm so glad we finally made this happen.
Absolutely.
All
Once
right.
once you launch your franchise, we'll have to have you back on. And on that
Absolutely.
note, because I always forget to do this, where can people find out more about you, and also I know you haven't actually started selling franchises yet, but
Right.
where could people get more information if they're interested?
I would say I do have a web page up. It's just kalunainteriors.com. And there's a little spot at the bottom. You can put in your name and your email address if you just want me to stay in touch with you. And I'm not going to pester you. I have nothing to pester you about. But as things
She's also
are
pretty
coming,
busy if you didn't
I'm a
pick
little
up on that.
busy. Yeah. But if you're interested in one, like just tracking how things are going, that will be there. We're building out that website right now, because I will be starting to offer some design tips. I'm going to be doing my own little, like, not formal podcast, but just a connection of like how things are going, and where things are. And that will be on that site. So you can just put your name and email address there, and we'll stay in touch that way. That's the best way to reach out to me right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll
Yeah.
put that in the show notes as well.
Thank
So
you.
people can get to it easily. But look, I really appreciate it. Proud of what you're doing. Keep up the good work,
Thanks.
and don't be a stranger.
All right. You take care of you.
All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.